What's up, folks? It's your boy BG here. It's been a while since my last video, but hey, I've been too busy keeping busy. Anyways, I speak a little bit fast today, all for the sake of brevity. Hope you enjoy. Cheers. If you watch the news or have been to a university campus as of recently, you may have noticed some disturbing trends. Riots over disliked speakers, no platforming, shouting down guests, and other such outrages have sparked a fierce free speech debate on campuses, a debate that has even spread outside the realm of academia. This debate has captured enormous journalistic attention and has thrust several academics into the limelight as they become regular fixtures in the podcast circuit. In many ways, this debate is a unique phenomenon. In some respects, there is little to compare it to. The situation is complex and difficult to make sense of. But as far as I can tell, one professor stands out in his ability to quantify relevant information, make empirical sense out of social trends, and lay out an argument on the matter in the simplest terms possible. The professor I am referring to is Jonathan Haidt. Haidt is an American social psychologist whom is currently a professor of ethical leadership at New York University's Stern School of Business. Aside from his numerous acclaimed and widely cited academic publications in moral psychology and related fields, Haidt has also written a range of popular publications, notably a series of alarming articles written for The Atlantic about the predicaments facing modern universities. Politically, Haidt remains neutral and has dedicated himself to the creation and preservation of political balance within discourse. His efforts to champion this cause include, but are not limited to, co-founding an academic network called Heterodox Academy to promote viewpoint diversity, and civilpolitics.org, an organization dedicated to multidisciplinary engagement. In addition to these accolades, Haidt is on the advisory council for the Acumen Fund to End World Poverty. He is a New York Times bestselling author and was named a top global thinker and top world thinker by Foreign Policy and Prospect magazine, respectively. Needless to say, Haidt is a formidable scholar. One of the reasons I enjoy Haidt's perspective on the campus debate is that he's clearly not some ideological firebrand ranting against leftism on campus, but rather an ethically grounded man with a keen global consciousness who shares his legitimate concerns about the way so-called social justice is being taught and practiced in universities. Now that some background information has been established, let's follow through one of Haidt's central theories about the problems within universities. Haidt sees a dichotomy in the missions of contemporary universities. The divide is between the Enlightenment view championed by John Stuart Mill and Thomas Jefferson, in which seeking truth is the central goal of a university, and the school of thought which places the central emphasis on social change and social justice. The latter is influenced by Karl Marx and subsequent scholars inspired by similar lines of thought. Haidt understands these missions to be ultimately reconcilable and even mutually enriching, but acknowledges that in practice, these competing viewpoints have begun to war with each other in serious ways. Interdisciplinary projects become corrupted when one disciplinary motive injects itself on another discipline, or forcefully causes another discipline to capitulate. Haidt provides the example of how a capitalistic agenda can skew and corrupt scientific results for monetary gain. Haidt's own body of widely read and cited sociological research has determined that scholarship undertaken to support a political agenda will almost certainly succeed and produce a pleasing falsehood, such as that an opposing political party is to blame for an unfavorable political situation. In order to reliably filter through conclusions and uphold objective methodologies and standards, universities and research bodies have developed processes of institutional disconfirmation in order for scholars to review each other's work and check for errors. Peer-reviewed journals and the methodologies they employ are examples of these processes at work. However, if the scholar's responsibilities for institutional disconfirmation are lopsided in favor of a political agenda or a political orientation, the whole process is at risk of producing pleasing falsehoods, and this is precisely what Haidt fears is happening currently on American campuses. Haidt has worked with other leading social scientists in order to gather resources and conduct research into potential political divides in academia. The results are truly amazing. In America, where the ratio of liberals to conservatives is roughly 1 to 2, the ratio of liberals to conservative humanities professors is at least 5 to 1 and as high as 10.5 to 1 in the social sciences, with only 4 to 8% of said professors flat out identifying as conservative. With issues like climate change and gun rights being pressing political issues, one might expect less conservative opinions on campuses. However, issues regarding economics, national security, globalization, and a host of other issues require a more robust political dialogue than is likely to exist amidst this disparity. In spite of our impulses to associate professors with partisan liberalism, this disparity is a recent phenomenon. According to statistical data presented by Haidt, this drastic political shift has occurred within only the last 20 years. Haidt claims that since American universities became research universities in the 18th century, there has never been as homogeneous a professorial as we have this year. According to Haidt, this severe lack of political diversity on campuses translates into an orthodoxy of views, a walking on eggshells sentiment in regard to opinions, intellectual fragility, less productive materials being shown in class. Quick aside, instances of these problems emerging on campuses have been widely documented by several reliable researchers such as Haidt himself. Because there are far too many examples to simply list, I will provide links in the description outlining and listing tangible instances of such occurrences. It is important to know that Haidt is not raising nebulous pie-in-the-sky concerns, but is speaking about real issues affecting perhaps millions of students on hundreds of campuses. This political imbalance phenomenon has led to the inability of many students and professors to handle challenging and dissenting viewpoints. Ideologically charged notions of sexuality, race, and safety have become the norm on many campuses in recent years, and notions of campuses being safe spaces have too often overshadowed the freedom to speak freely and present opinions that challenge this new vogue orthodoxy.
It is not about creating an intellectual space. It is not. Do you understand that? It's about creating a home here.
As Haidt explains, the central focus of the university has shifted from truth to victimhood. Although this accelerating shift in focus from truth to non-offense can be demonstrated, its exact causes are not conclusively known. Haidt has proposed that a rise in helicopter parenting in recent decades is to blame, while others focus the blame on an overabundance of postmodern and Marxist scholarship being taught and produced in universities. The reasons may in fact be multi-layered. Haidt points out that some scholars such as Bradley Campbell and Jason Manning understand this shift to be symptomatic of, or perhaps even a causal factor, in a greater cultural shift towards victimhood in American society. Unlike other cultural systems that settle problems through self-reliant means or by brushing them off, victim cultures bring problems to central authorities. This fixation on authority can be seen in the recent explosion of university administrative bodies, but more on that in a later video. The danger Haidt and other commentators see in this shift is the development of moral dependency. In the case of America's rapidly radicalizing campuses, students and even faculty have often demonstrated dependence on the forces that keep conservative, right-leaning, and even classically understood liberal ideas out of campuses and away from the campus's fragile, easily triggered populace. Haidt has identified at least 4 positions which are effectively treated as blasphemies within large and often influential segments of American academia. They are as follows. 1. Opposing the notion that racism and sexism are endemic to American society. 2. Opposing the notion that victims play no role in their current state. 3. Opposing the notion that there is no difference in ability or interest between different groups. 4. Opposing the notion that affirmative action is good. These blasphemies are not arbitrarily labeled as such. Not only does Haidt identify and lengthily address the ideological foundation of these blasphemies, he also provides several concrete examples of the emerging Inquisition. Further links posted below. These blasphemies are particularly troublesome when it comes to studying disparities, such as the disparity between men and women in STEM fields, the racial makeup of institutions, or virtually any area where racial, sexual, or otherwise demographical variations can be observed. The problem comes from social justice thinkers ignoring one of the central truths of social science, that correlation does not imply causation. For instance, since the 1990s, both autism rates and organic food sales have increased at comparable rates, but the two are almost certainly unrelated. The correlation and increase does not causally link the two. The concept is quite simple to understand and is a central principle in almost all disciplines. However, those in the social justice camp cannot help but demand that the correlation found in demographic disparities are necessarily caused by discrimination. For example, according to this vogue social justice, if less women are employed in a given tech field, it must be due to some form of sexism. Or if Hispanic and Black students are more likely to be suspended in school, it must be due to some form of racism. However, in both these scenarios, which are true in many tech sectors and school districts across America, there are several other variables likely to contribute to the disparity. In the case of women in tech, other variables include females' work preferences and inclination to gravitate to other fields of science such as biology. In the case of Hispanic and Black suspensions, there is no question that these students are at higher risk of fatherlessness and other related domestic situations which have been causally linked to youth misbehavior and criminality by behavioral scientists. Even though factors outside of discrimination are likely to be the primary causal factor in these disparities, this information will simply be disregarded by today's social justice thinkers. Why? Because they entail the aforementioned blasphemies by 1. Undermining racism and sexism's endemic role, at least in these instances. 2. By placing some responsibility on the victimized party or their communities. 3. By implying differences in interest and perhaps even ability. And 4. By challenging affirmative action's goodness in way of repairing these disparities. This presents an enormous and frankly irreconcilable problem for universities. The notion that unequal outcomes imply unfairness and the idea that demographic disparities are always caused by discriminatory factors are often out of touch with empirical reality and can be in denial of more causal probable factors. Simply put, the social justice side wants equal outcomes for all demographics, or outcomes inflated in favor of alleged victimized groups, and those seeking a traditional notion of truth recognize that a multitude of factors, including intelligence distribution, work ethic, and personal and domestic decision-making, will inevitably lead to unequal outcomes of some sort. This is not to say that discrimination does not exist, or that meritocracy is guaranteed, but that even in a perfectly just system, disparities will inevitably emerge. Haidt points out that various universities have pledged themselves either to social justice or to truth in the traditional Veritas sense. This isn't a petty skirmish between low-ranking universities either. The president and provost of Brown, an Ivy League school, has openly pledged itself towards the pursuit of social justice, even presenting a $100 million diversity and inclusion program, whereas the University of Chicago has taken a stance against PC and social justice culture, with top administrators stating that the university is committed to the pursuit of truth. Haidt believes that these opposing commitments will cause, or even should cause, a schism within the university system, with social justice schools splitting away from truth universities, in the same way that truth universities split from divinity schools in the 1800s. Some components of Haidt's argument may be contentious, and his theory is certainly not the be-all and end-all of the campus debate. But his case is clearly laid out. The central concerns he raises are in regard to concrete epistemological and freedom of speech issues affecting millions of students on hundreds of campuses domestically and abroad. It has been clearly demonstrated that professoriates have become homogenous in political stance and victimhood cultures have become commonplace. The problems affecting universities and campus life are multifaceted, and in my opinion, Haidt's analysis does well to thoroughly analyze and address some of the problem-ridden facets. Please share your own opinions on the matter in the comments section below. In my next video, I hope to discuss the explosion of university administrations and some of the potential problems this extreme growth may be causing. Thanks for watching, and long live Truth University.